10K subscribers, we've done it. Thank you so much for the support, everyone. In order to show our appreciation, we've got a special video lined up. I recently played movie star Ben Affleck at 2550 no limit. So let's see if I can beat Batman at the poker tables. In case you have not subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe so you can watch all our free content. Oh, and we have got a special discount code for the new BluffTheSpot lab to help you improve your poker skills, and hopefully we'll see each other at the tables. Use Road to 10K when registering for the lab and you're all set. Let's get into the session. What's up everyone, MMAsherdog here for BluffTheSpot. We are so excited to have reached 10K subscribers on YouTube, and in order to thank you, we have got a special video lined up for you today. We're very grateful for all you guys supporting us because it helps us continue to grow the channel and upload new and free content. In case you haven't subscribed yet, please take a few seconds and click the subscribe button now. For years I've heard rumors of Ben Affleck playing poker in some of the biggest poker games around the world, and then one day all of a sudden he sat me at my 2550 no limit hold'em table. So I couldn't help but record the action and share it with you guys. So let's see what happened. The game's 2550 no limit hold'em, 5k buy-in, and it's a bomb pot, which is going to create some serious action. So let's have a look at the action. As you can see, we got two tables, and this is on WPN. I know who a lot of these regulars are. Ben Affleck obviously has the Ben A nickname as well as his face on it. The first time I saw it, I thought this must have been a troll, but then I read that it was confirmed it's actually him. So in the very first hand, we've got 4-7 suited here. Unfortunately not versus Ben. We're playing versus All In, who's a very good regular. And we're facing a slightly larger opening size. Usually you see around 2.5x as the standard opening size. 4-7 suited is pretty close, but with the low rake, I think we can defend our hand. Our hand's actually pretty playable out of position. And we do call, I like it. We're not really going to lead any flops here unless it's maybe a very good board for our range, but this board is not particularly bad, but also not particularly great for our range. And let's see what our villain does. He tanks, and eventually he bets a little bit over pot, which is kind of a fun, unorthodox sizing. Against this sizing, we're going to have to play very tight because we're getting very bad odds to continue. Obviously, we don't have that many really good hands here. We're going to have 7s and 3s and 10-7 and ace-10. A couple other good hands, but that's about it. So not going to check raise very often on this flop. 4-7 suited. We have a pair. We have some backdoors. Easy call, even though we're not happy about it. And we see on table 2, I've got Queen Jack suited. You can call this hand sometimes if you like, but 3-betting definitely happens very often as well. Our hand is very good in a 3-bet pot. So I'm contemplating my decisions, contemplating my life, but in the end I decided to call, which is standard. And on the jack, I'm probably just done with my hand if our opponent bets. 9-8 got there. Hands like Jack 9 and now beat us. If our opponent's bluffing with hand like 4-5 or 4-6, well, we have a 4 in our hand, so that's not a good card to hold. And if we're behind, we could easily be dead already, or just drawing to a 7 or a 4. Thankfully, our opponent checks, and we hit the bingo card. This is about as good of a card as it gets. Now, our opponent still could have us beat because he could have bet a better 7 on the flop, a hand like King 7 or Ace 7. He could be trapping sometimes with a hand like Pocket 10s or Pocket Jacks, but we're going to have the best hand very often here. So we can do so many things here. We can check raise, we can lead out small, we can lead out large. I think sometimes on this board you want to lead out quite small, and sometimes you want to lead out quite large. So I actually decided to go for a little bit of a trappy bet here. I was thinking I also want to bet some weaker hands like this for value, and I'm trying to trap him and induce a raise. While I bet half pot on the Queen Jack on the 3-3-4 flop, which is a really, really good flop for me. It's not a really good flop for me because the 3 and the 4 don't improve me. It's just that I'm so far ahead because I 3-bet aces and kings and queens pre-flop, and he would likely 4-bet at least aces and kings every time. So I'm doing quite well on this board. I'm very happy to bet aggressively. And the 8 is about as bad as it gets. In position is going to turn a lot of flushes and pocket 8s and hands like 10s with a diamond. Now improve their equity. So I'm just done with this hand. And as you see, with 4-7 suited, I'm going to trap and bet small. We can use a size of like 750, 1K, even sizes like 1500. There's a lot of plays you can use on the. There's a lot of strategies you can use on this run out. And with Queen Jack suited, yeah, we're getting great odds, but obviously never calling there. Maybe we can bluff the river to represent a hand like pocket queens, pocket jacks, which I would play in this manner quite often. So since this is a big action game, I'm going to be playing some more hands, but obviously King 3 is not one of them. You know, Ben is a guy who really loves to gamble. He plays a lot of hands. He plays them very aggressively, so I'm going to loosen up myself. Jack 8 is going to be an open raise on the button. It's a pretty loose raise, but it is a hand I will be playing, especially in position. So I'm hoping that Beam Olive folds, and he does. And I've decided to go for an old school sizing of $175. If somebody's worth as much money as Ben Affleck, he's going to play a lot of hands, right? So I want to make the pot as big as I can with good hands. Or even my medium hands like Jack 8. Alright, so we've got our first bomb pot. There's already $1,500 in the pot. We all put in $300 pre-flop, and then we say go, and we start playing our hands. And because there's 5 opponents, the chances of somebody having a jack are extremely high. So we have to be very, very careful here. Of course, our opponents can have hands like aces, etc. So if I wanted to bet here, I'd definitely just go for a small bet. Try and weed out some bad hands. But with 8-7 offsuit, out of position to 3 players, this would be quite an ambitious bluff. So I'm just going to give this one up for now. And I can still win the pot later, potentially, if nobody seems interested in winning it. And these pots are really fun because nobody's really studied them in depth, right? Because who the hell plays bomb pot? So you'll create a lot of edge here. Because when people don't study things, they just have to freestyle them in game, and then you make a lot of mistakes. So Ben's saying he's got a jack basically, maybe a good draw, maybe something like a pair. And obviously I'm not going to do anything. Check raise and the shove the 6th turn is quite ambitious. Alright, so we've got our second bomb pot. Please give me the button. Alright, I'll take cutoff. I remember this hand. I remember it all too well. Alright, so 6-4 offsuit. Let's see what happens. If somebody bets, we're obviously going to end up folding because we have a 4 high flush draw 6-way, so our flush draw is almost for sure dominated. Meanwhile, we happily see a flop with the 10-4 offsuit. Had Ben min raised, I still would have folded, so I'm happy to just see 3 cards and maybe hit something big. And if I don't hit anything big, I'm out of there. Check, check. And on the king, I'm just going to give up here. This card is obviously very good for his check back range. He's likely limping a decent amount of king highs. He'll check him behind on the flop sometimes and now improve. So I'm not looking to put in more money. Well, when another king rolls off, obviously that's great news because it's less likely he's got a king. I wouldn't hate betting the minimum here to get him to call with hand like pocket 3s or maybe queen high, but at the same time I think checking in order to just let him bluff and then check call also works quite well. And 6-4 I'm just gonna give up. Deuce makes things a little bit more interesting because, I mean, we turn and got shot. So it's going to get checked through us, if I remember correctly. All right, and so I would be doing a lot of checking in the spot, so I can definitely have some good hands here. I can definitely have slow played flushes. I can have hands like pocket deuces. I can have some hands like 2 pair. So when everybody checks to me twice, I think being aggressive and using their position against them is going to work out sometimes. And I've played Ben a little bit before, and he loves to bet. So when he checks behind here, I think he's not that strong. Or maybe he's being very deceptive and he trapped me. Definitely possible, but I don't think he's that strong. So I actually wouldn't mind bluffing here. Now, it is quite aggressive, and if you start bluffing hands like 6 high draws quite often, then you're just going to get killed by calls and raises. But I think sometimes this play actually works out very effectively. And if, let's say, Ben has a hand like 10 on offsuit here, it's just a really shitty spot for him because he's got so many players to worry about. So when he calls here, that makes him look a little bit stronger. He did call very quickly, so when he just calls pretty quickly, I don't think he really has a flush or anything like that. He probably just has like a big heart or a 10, maybe a king. That's about it. I think even if he had pocket deuces, he would at least consider raising, or a hand like 10 deuce offsuit. Alright, so we see the 7 river, which doesn't help Ben a whole lot. He can have hands like king 7, 10 7, maybe pocket 7s with a heart, but again, that's pretty ambitious. So I know I've slow played a lot of really good hands here, and I've seen Ben bet virtually always when checked to. I've seen him bet with a lot of medium strength hands, and when he checks behind the flop, I think he's quite weak actually. So I want to see myself just attacking here. I think he's got some kind of medium strength hand, and if I blast it off against him, I think he's gonna fold. So I'd like to see myself go all in here, and I think he will fold if I do so, or I'll just get burnt. And I decide to go all in here. I'm risking it all. Now, this is not a play that I generally recommend, but I think in this spot it was actually the right play. So Ben just folded immediately. That tells me he probably didn't even have to make a real decision. He probably just had something like the queen of hearts, and obviously you can't call with just queen high, even though he would have had the best hand. So I like my bluff there. Obviously, it has to work 2/3 of the time or more because we're risking 5k to win 2,500. So basically, you would win 2.5k, you win 2.5k again, so you have 5k, but then the third time you lose 5k and you break even. So you'd have to win slightly more than that. Obviously, if we check, we're never going to win the hand. But I like my play. It's quite aggressive and spewy, and it's something I definitely don't do very often. But every now and again, you got to put people to the test, right? Alright, next hand. I've got pocket 5s on the button. And this hand is generally going to be a flat call. Folding is a little bit tight with the low rake, but, 3-betting is a bit aggressive. I like flatting here. I'm going to flat some really strong hands here too sometimes, so when I get squeezed, I don't just always fold or call with a shitty hand, and then I'm in trouble post-flop. And this is an amazing board for out of position because he's going to have ace-king and queens and jacks and 10s and probably 9-8 and aces and kings and all kinds of good hands. So I'm not going to play my hand here. Bluff raising or even calling is quite loose. And that's okay, guys. Sometimes you just lose a hand. Sometimes you just got to give it up. Winning every single hand is not necessarily the best strategy. Got 4-7 suited here. Happily seeing a flop, but not when I have to pay $250. I hovered over the call button, but I knew that wasn't going to happen. And this board is, pretty tricky. Ben is going to limp call a lot of hands that interact with the Jack 7-3 flop. And Aurora is going to have a lot of misses with his ace high, king high, queen high type of stuff. But obviously he'll still have hands like jacks and 7s and queens and big flush draws. So he's doing all right. I really hope everybody folds, so I get to raise the 9-8. But it's not a hand I can really 3-bet or overcall, so just gotta pray it gets folded to me. Well, unfortunately we gotta fold the 9-8, but fortunately we've got aces, and I'm never folding those pre-flop. Cutting edge poker strategy from BluffTheSpot coming to you. Aces are not folded pre-flop in a cash game. There's actually some spots in which you could fold aces in a tournament. But obviously that's very, very unlikely. In satellites, for instance, you could do it, but I can count them on one hand the amount of times I've folded aces in that spot. Obviously, always 3-betting versus a small bet open raise. Our opponent is likely going to raise between like 30 and 50% in the small blind, and aces has insane equity no matter what he's got. And we see a Jack 6-4 flop. This is a flop that people play differently. Some people just bet third pot range or half pot range. Some people decide to mix it up sometimes. Trapping aces here wouldn't be a bad play. You're mainly getting check called 3 times by a hand like ace jack. And when you have 2 aces in your hand, obviously that's quite unlikely, right? So of course the villain could still have a worse jack or all kinds of good hands. So let's see what we do. And I'm saying we because you guys are in here with me. So I'm sticking to the basic strategy here of just betting third pot. I think that's a fine play. Against different players, I'll use different types of strategies. Money Bye is a buddy of mine. I know who he is, and I know how he plays quite well, and he's an excellent player. So we hit this 4, which is a pretty good card. I mean, it's not an amazing card because villain could definitely have 4 or 5, ace 4. Obviously unlikely when we have 2 aces. He could maybe have some hands like king 4, which is a little bit loose but possible. So betting obviously again makes sense to get value from flush draws and straight draws and a jack and even hands like pocket 8s. But I wouldn't even hate trapping here and letting our opponent bluff on the river. Obviously, you can't always just bet every good hand, and the next time you check behind, you always have like ace high, and then you just fold, right? So I actually decided to trap here, which I really don't mind. Except that's not a great card, because pocket 8s get there. 7-5 gets there, but who knows if villain has 7-5, because that's a loose call against a 3-bet. And obviously the flush gets there. Now, our opponent bets quite large, and I don't think we can fold. I mean, we beat some backdoor club hands. We beat maybe like an under pair. He could have floated with ace high, king high. And it's even possible villain makes a value bet with a worse hand than ours. So, of course, when we block ace jack, that's a bit less likely. But villain could definitely have king jack and think, well, this guy just doesn't check by good hands. And my king jack is basically the nut. So I'm not loving it, of course. I know I'm looking for reasons to call. But unless we think that villain is a super nit, we just can't fold this hand. And villain went for the thin value bet. So as I said, if you're beating queen jack, you're beating king jack, you're beating ace jack, you might even be beating a hand like jack 10 or jack 9, and of course the obvious bluffs. So our hand is not a snap call, but we can't fold. So it does suck to see that he has that hand, right? Because had we bet the turn, there's no way he would have folded, and then we probably would have just shoved the river. And queen jack would have been a really good calling hand. So yeah, we potentially lost out on a little bit of money there, but it's not only about playing every hand in a vacuum. You have to think about how to play a range. So I think my play was pretty cool. It's one of those hands where you just have to mix it up. You can check back the flop, you can check back the turn, you can just bet 3 times, but it's important to spread your good hands over different lines, so when you check, you're not always weak, or when you bet, you're not always weak, for instance. So I'll say nice hand to me, or nice hand to us. That was the last hand of the video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Because we managed to reach 10k subscribers, we are giving 33% off the BluffTheSpot Lab this month, and 10% off the Lab Plus. You can check it out on BluffTheSpot.com. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss part 2. See you there, and good luck at the tables.